This video is brought to you by Brilliant. Last year was a whirlwind in UK politics. We entered the year with Boris Johnson as Prime Minister. We then saw the Partygate scandal severely damage his credibility. This scandal worsened, and following the addition of the infamous Chris Pincher scandal, in which the Prime Minister was shown to have knowingly employed a man accused of sexual assault, Boris Johnson was brought down by his own party. The man who led the Conservatives to their biggest election victory since 1979 was no more. Or so we thought. Following the failed Liz Truss premiership, there were rumours that Johnson may stand again for leader. It was reported he had passed the threshold of MPs needed to appear on the ballot, and polls showed that he was the favourite to succeed Truss amongst the rank-and-file party members. In essence, if Johnson decided to run, he would likely have been a shoo-in for the top job. He ultimately decided against it, though. The question is, did Johnson decide against it as he didn't want to be Prime Minister ever again, or did he simply think that it wasn't the right time? Let's have a look now at whether Johnson is plotting a comeback. Unlike other countries like the US, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom is not elected directly by the people. Rather, they're invited to form a government in the name of the monarch by virtue of their position as the leader of the largest political party. So, when Liz Truss resigned, for example, it was up to the Conservative Party to select their new leader. The rules for doing so are set out in Schedule 2 of the Conservative Party Constitution, which stipulates that it shall be the duty of the 1922 committee to present to the party as soon as reasonably practicable a choice of candidate for the election as leader. As you can probably see, this is some pretty loose wording which grants the 1922 committee huge power. In the summer, Conservative MPs selected Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss as the two members that were offered to the party. The membership subsequently selected Truss as leader. Now, the point here is that the membership actively rejected Rishi Sunak. So, when Tory MPs ousted Truss and installed Sunak, it was seen as a sort of betrayal of the rank-and-file membership. In fact, some members felt so outraged by this that they set up a group whose sole purpose is to change the constitution of the Conservative Party and hand more power back to the rank-and-file members. This group is called the Conservative Democracy Organisation, or CDO. Now, aside from their supports for more democracy in the Conservative Party, there appears to be something else unifying the founding members of the CDO: their support for Boris Johnson. The president of the CDO is Peter Cruddas, who had previously donated more than £50,000 to Boris Johnson's 2019 leadership campaign. The chairman is David Campbell Bannerman, who spent time defending Boris Johnson, even when the tide was turning against him. For example, he appeared on Good Morning Britain in April 2022, arguing that we should accept Boris Johnson's apology for how he acted in relation to the Partygate scandal. The CEO of the CDO is Claire Bullivant, and she set up a petition back in October to bring back Boris. Now, the fact that the CDO supports Boris is relevant to this video because it seems that they might actually be the organisation that could allow Johnson to re-enter Downing Street as Prime Minister once again. Their plan uses a mechanism stipulated in the Conservative Party Constitution, which states that a national convention must be called if a petition calling for one gains more than 10,000 signatures. Now, if they achieve this, then the party must meet and rule changes are voted on. The CDO would obviously propose changes which would require the leader to be selected by the party membership rather than Conservative MPs. Now, between Christmas and New Year, Conservative Home ran a poll of Conservative members to see who their Minister of the Year was. Ben Wallace topped this, but coming in at fourth place, above Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss, was Boris Johnson. In addition to this, People Polling ran a survey looking at the three Prime Ministers that Britain had in 2022. Johnson led the pack, with 32% of respondents saying that he was the most competent. Only 29% went with Sunak, and a mere 3% with Truss. Additionally, on YouGov, Boris Johnson is still the most popular Conservative politician, with a popularity rating of 30%, above Sunak's 25%. The point we're making is that there appears to be some desire within the Conservative Party and the wider public for a return of Johnson. So, if the CDO were successful in changing the rules and there was another leadership election, then there is a very real possibility that Johnson could win. But how could a leadership election come about? Well, ultimately, outside of Sunak just resigning, there's only really one way: a vote of no confidence. This requires 15% of Conservative MPs to call for it, which currently amounts to 54 MPs. Considering that it was reported that more than 100 MPs backed Johnson at the last election, if they were to vote on this on the assumption that it would get their man back into Downing Street, there is a world in which enough might back it. Whether they could actually win the vote is another question, but to be fair, even that a vote of no confidence was held would undermine Sunak's position and begin to make his position potentially untenable. As you can see, there are a number of hurdles that need to be overcome for Boris Johnson's comeback to be successful. The CDO needs to change the rules, a vote of no confidence needs to be held, Sunak needs to either lose or resign, and Johnson needs to be selected as the new leader. And for any of these to be in any way relevant, Johnson himself has to actually want to be leader again. Let's not forget that he opted not to stand in the last leadership election, despite having enough backers and polling suggesting he'd win the membership vote. As Martin Fletcher at The New Statesman has argued, Johnson is making a lot of money on the backbenches, and perhaps he'd just prefer to keep doing that. Ultimately, it's not clear whether a Boris Johnson comeback is indeed likely or even possible. It depends on Johnson's desire to return and the success of the CDO in changing the rules and paving the way for a Johnson ascendancy. And while it's unclear what Johnson's plans are for 2023, if he's anything like us, resolutions and plans for the new year are already out the window. If you do want to improve yourself though, maybe pick up a new resolution and sign up to Brilliant, the STEM learning platform which helps you with exciting new science and maths topics through engaging and interactive experiences. Their courses, including ones co-designed by YouTubers including Kurzgesagt and fellow Nebula creator Real Engineering, bring the topics to life and let you learn by doing, not just sitting in a class like at school. That means that all kinds of topics which previously seemed a little too complex might suddenly be in your grasp. That's things like algebra, geometry, the physics of every day, or even gravitational physics. So up your game in STEM in 2023 to improve your understanding of the world, boost your career, help at school or university, or even just for the sake of lifelong learning. Plus, the first 200 people to sign up using our code get 20% off an annual premium subscription, which is probably a bigger win than most people's 2023 resolutions have been. Anyway, thanks for your support.